All right, our little handy clamps and my broken handy clamp. The stock, whatever these are, I think they're beech, birch, I don't know. They're very nice. They're wood. They're just kind of white, yellowy white. I started making some nice walnut ones for the 6-inch clamp, and when I was test fitting everything and making sure, I was thinking about making them longer or making them rounder, whatever. I actually broke this one. This is not great wood anyways, which means I get to make another one of these, which I'm okay with. But what I want to do is make some laminated handles for this clamp. So last night I took some more scraps, because this is all scraps. These are fairly good ones, but I laminated them together to make make a block, which should be big enough to make a couple handles out of. So let's unclamp this and see what we got. So we have this stick, and it just needs some glue cleanup. Needs to be a square. So let's clean it up. Bring it over the joiner. So after getting done on the jointer, getting two 90-degree faces, we bring it over to the table saw to parallel up and make basically a perfect little square on the table saw. Kind of helps if you take the two jointed sides and put them on the table and against the fence to reference off of. Yeah, that would help. So by flipping it 90 degrees and then sending it back through the table saw without adjusting any of the fence or anything, we end up with basically a perfect square. So now that we have our perfect little square stick, let's go over to the miter box. Okay, let's clean it up a little bit. Get the two ends square. All right. Now, here's the length of the actual one they have. Somewhere around there. I wanted them a little bit longer than the stock ones, so I decided to just cut the stick basically in half, which added about an inch to each handle. We can always make it smaller, we can't make it bigger. So let's make them 4 inches. So after cutting them down to length, you have to find the center, and I'll put a little punch mark in it so I can center the jig that's coming up next. Hey, we have a big old mess. This is a jig designed by Pask Makes, or Pask, or he's an Australian, I believe, or New Zealand. I'm pretty sure he's an Australian. But anyways, it's a pretty simple jig. I did a pretty bad job replicating it because I used cheap particle board, and I didn't drill these straight, but it's good enough. Basically what it is there's a little guide or guard on the bandsaw that rides on this lower piece. This piece here is just a template. This is the jig. This is a template. This is the arc I'm going to get in my handle. It's very mild, so it'll be a pretty square handle. And you screw this into it. That's why I punched out the centers. And you try and get it in the middle somewhat. And I turn it in just a little bit to get a good grip on it. But you want this to be able to turn, but you want it to be stiff. And what this does, and these here do, is you slide this in, it butts up against this face and holds it so you can cut this point off. And then you just pull it out, rotate it, cut the next point off. Pull it out, rotate it, and cut the next point off. What we have here is a little, basically just a long board that doesn't matter. It's just barely trapping the bandsaw blade and leaving it a little bit proud. So when I bring this up, it's going to cut into it. I moved it out just a little bit, not a whole lot. And that makes it so if I were flat, I'm right up against there. It's not really cutting, it would be scraping. So I should, at a corner, be at the same height and slightly round it over. There's only one way to find out, and that's, to actually cut it. So you just feed the block on the jig through the bandsaw and just kind of ride it up against those two little nubs in the straight edge on the bandsaw, and it gives you a arc cut into the handle. So you can see it drops off the corner. You could almost do this on a table saw and just cut it at 45s. This does give you a little arc. It's hard to see on my footage here, but there is a slight arc to it, which I like. It makes it nicer. So after you get done on the bandsaw, I bring it over to the sander, and after cleaning up the belt on the belt sander, we kind of round them over and smooth them out and make them more like, handle shaped. And when we get done with that, we bring it over to the drill press, and I'm actually using the clamp itself to hold the handle square and straight. And we drill out for the threaded rod to go into. All right, now we have some handles, and then we just got to shave these down to fit here. It's almost too far already. So it should be fairly easy to do it. I got this from my brother for Christmas, so I got to use it. And you just go around and mark it. And by using the marking gauge, it actually cuts a little lip into it, and it's perfect to get the chisel in to start. And then we just chisel out some. And I kind of like to sort of half fit it and decide where I got to chisel out. I got to do mostly the maple. Everything else I kind of rounded over enough. I think I got to take out a little here, just a little here, just a little here. Let's get chiseling. Okay, I'm terrible with a chisel. I don't have a lot of practice with it. So that's one of the reasons I wanted to do this was, to have some practice. But because I'm not very good at it, I'm gonna kind of abridge this a little bit, not show you all the stupid ways I went about doing it. So after way too long, because again, I don't know what I'm doing, I finally got it and the ferrules fit on the handle. So now it's time for some epoxy. I'm going to use a 30-minute epoxy, two-part epoxy. Just like the extra working time, you can use 5 minute, you can use 60 minute, whatever you want. I also put some blue tape around the edge of the handle so any of the squeeze out I can easily clean up after. With a nice even coat of epoxy, you now press the ferrule on. Get it on there nice and tight. With a little wipe down to clean everything up, I like to actually take the blue tape off now while the epoxy's still wet. That way I don't actually, epoxy the blue tape on permanently. And then you let the epoxy set for 30 minutes, 60 minutes, however long the epoxy is that you wanted to use. Now it's time to clean it up. I like these sanders because you can get this little edge here of the sandpaper, and it's really good at getting into slots. Like here. So go around, give it a little sanding, clean everything up, smooth it off, get rid of any excess. And now it's time to take a tack cloth to it, remove any sawdust, and get ready for oiling. And a little simple mineral oil, and I'll wax it after. Pretty. That is pretty. Those are nice, and they feel good in the hand. They're the perfect size. Now I'm marking about how deep I need to go onto the threads with the handle. Just gives me a nice reference point so I know I'm at least on enough when I'm screwing them on. I am not going to epoxy these. I'm just going to screw them on, and then they supply you a nail that you drill a hole through and then punch it through. Now, because I'm not gluing it, if I were going to glue it, I couldn't do this. But I'm going to use a little oil, and it's just the same mineral oil, and it's going to do two things. It's going to lubricate the wood with the threads, but not just lubricate, it's actually going to soften it a little bit. Oops, I guess I got a lot in there. More than I thought. It's going to soften it so they thread easier. And what you do is close it all the way, because this actually opens by screwing it on here. And as you can see, that's going on very easy. Where's my mark? Here, my cleaning. Okay, I don't know how well this little skinny drill bit's going to work, but we're going to give it a shot. Basically go about in the middle of this and drill through it. So yeah, I had some issues drilling it. I actually started by using a very small bit and then trying to enlarge it, and that was a bad idea because it's just another small bit. And when the second small bit caught the edge of the actual threaded rod, it snapped the point off of it. So don't do that. That worked beautifully. Except for never went all the way through. Oops, I check everything first. So after, re-drilling it so it went all the way through, it worked really quite well. That one worked. And after drilling and pinning the other one, they're done. Pretty. So there they are, handles custom made by me for the custom made hand clamp, hand screw clamp. This thing works pretty awesomely. There's been a little few things I did differently, but this is a handle video, and the handles are quite nice. I made them a little bit longer than the originals. The thing is TayTools also makes other kits that are just as fun. You can save a few bucks by making your own handles for chisels. These are Nerix chisels, and you can actually get Nerix Richer ones, which are a step up. They also make Nerix, and I believe one other company, of marking knife kit, where you just get the marking knife blade and a couple of pins, and you make your own handle. This is the first one I made. Made this handle a long time ago. I use this pretty regularly. I use these pretty regularly. Saves a few bucks. Make your own handles. It's actually a lot of fun to do. They're very pretty. I just threw some mineral oil on them, and then a couple hours later I beeswaxed them, and that's all I'm going to do to them. I'm going to use these. These are not just to sit and play or sit and look at. These are actually going to get used. There you go.